The CEO of BYD made some predictions at the start of this year. They were being, fairly aggressive and bullish. They were saying that electric car sales might just hit 50% by the end of the year. Well, as you all know, that happened much earlier. In fact, it happened in the third month of the year. When I was in China a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking to myself, there's so many nice electric cars here. The country has changed in the most remarkable way since I was there back when I was about 28, 29 years old. I mean, back then, the air quality was shocking. There was just crappy internal combustion, Nissan Sylphies driving around, just legacy automaker vehicles driving around. Nothing you would never look at the roads and think, well, look at that. That's a cool car. I wouldn't mind driving that. Wow, look at that. I would love to own that car. I never ever thought that. And I was in China for many months. But now you go to China and you look around and you think, whoa, look at that. What's that? Oh, look at that thing. Look how cool that is. And honestly, you can just stand there by the side of the road and it's fun just to look at all the different cars coming past. You could never say that in the past. Now, the evidence is pretty clear of what's going on. Chinese EV sales grew by 65% in November versus November of last year. That means that in the first 3 weeks of November, just over 1 million NEVs, new energy vehicles, were sold, as in plug-in hybrids and EVs were sold in the first 3 weeks. 1 million were sold. You can see how incredibly large this car market is, and it's changing at the fastest pace in history. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. Great to have you with us. If you feel like the channel is providing you with value, then I'd love if you'd like to be a member. I'll put a link in the description below to our YouTube members page. From the 1st of November to the 24th of November, 1,007,000 new energy vehicles were sold in total. That's actually growth of 68% from the same month last year. Now, apparently EV sales aren't growing worldwide. Well, actually, they are. Of course, most of the growth is on the back of the Chinese car market. But remember, it's not just China. China is revamping other car markets, like, for example, Thailand. Many other places, Brazil. There's many countries that are being affected by Chinese manufacturers. So this is not just China. It's having ramifications all around the world. In November, from the 1st to the 24th, China's passenger new energy vehicles, as in NEV retail sales, were 867,000. But in total, 1 million passenger vehicles were sold, or 1 million EVs and plug-in hybrids were sold in the first 3 weeks, in the first 23 days of November. Now that means that in total, there's actually been 10 million sales so far. 10 million sales of new energy vehicles in China. We're not even at 11 months and there's already 10 million. A lot of experts said that China would hit 9 million this year. Now, I believe I made a prediction earlier in the year that they would hit just over 10 million. But as you can see, I was way off the mark. They're going to hit well over 11 million, which is phenomenal. It's just incredible what's happening. So what does this mean? Well, NEV sales have grown by 68% versus the same month last year. But that is growth of only 7% versus October. Anyhow, still growth, right? And the key figure here is what they did last year, 68% growth versus last year. If the market grows again at 68% next year, like if we're looking at next November, we're saying the same thing, and we probably will be, that will mean that legacy automakers will mostly be dead in China. They will have left. Of course, companies like Nissan and Honda, and they'll be finished because they don't really sell many EVs. Very, very few. In fact, when the Chinese go to buy a new electric car, they're not looking at legacy automakers. They're just not. Guys, go to China. I'm telling you now. Go around to different cities. See if you can spot any electric cars made by Toyota or by anyone that is not Tesla or BYD or Chinese EV brands. It's very hard to see them. I couldn't find any, which is insane. Wholesale sales of China's passenger EVs from November the 1st to the 24th were 1,007,000, up 65% from the same period last year. So wholesale sales are a little different to residential commercial sales, because passenger sales, because that's an inclusion of business sales. But what that basically means is that, yeah, just over 1 million were sold in the first 23 days of the month. So in total, cumulative sales of China's passenger NEVs so far this year were 10.3 million, which is growth of 40% versus last year. And that means that actually so far this year, around 50% of all vehicles sold in the country were either electric or plug-in hybrids. But the majority of those NEVs, new energy vehicle sales, were actually electric, more than 65%. So that means that, as you can see, the predominant number of these new energy vehicles is electric, and therefore China's retail sales are completely transforming. They're going EV very, very quickly. So far this year, there's been 19.5 million cars, or 19.47 million cars sold in China. Of those, 10.5 million were NEVs. China's EV penetration at retail was 53%. So 53% of all cars being sold in November were EVs or plug-in hybrids. But the majority of those NEVs were EVs, as I said before. China's daily average passenger car sales are 57,000, and that's up 30% year on year. So why have sales in China grown this year? Sales in China have grown by around 10%, I believe, versus the previous year. Well, the biggest reason for that is because the Chinese government has been stimulating the automotive industry. And this is true. This is simply a statistical fact. Unlike these idiotic China Observer website YouTubers, please don't send me emails from these retards because they're just sprouting nonsense. The stats are that the Chinese government are stimulating the automotive industry. They are pouring billions into the industry. And to be honest, it's not just China doing this. I mean, Europe is doing the same thing. But this is having a big effect. What they're doing is they're offering consumers some significant deals or discounts on trading in their old gasoline-powered cars. China wants to get all these petrol and diesel-powered cars off the road, particularly petrol. It's more petrol than diesel. They want to get these off the road. So you get a pretty significant credit towards a new car if you trade in your old car. Plus, they're offering 0% interest. Tesla has 0% interest. A lot of manufacturers are offering the 0% interest. There's really never been a better time if you're a consumer to go and get a new car. So it's not just the Chinese government, it's also consumers saying, well, actually, all these different cities are making it hard for us to register an internal combustion car. So it's just easier to buy a plug-in hybrid, easier to buy an EV. It's cheaper to run them as well. Keep in mind that more than 50% of the world's chargers are fast DC chargers are located in China. So there's charging infrastructure everywhere, even though most people live in an apartment. So remember this, right? A lot of the naysayers saying EVs won't succeed in New York or they won't succeed in cities or most places around the world because most people live in an apartment. Well, that's absolutely nonsense because look at China. I mean, really, of the people buying electric cars in China, at least 80% of them live in an apartment block. So nothing's stopping them. Really, what it comes down to is just having the infrastructure. And in China, there are now 600 kilowatt chargers, DC chargers being installed, quite a lot of them, but there's even 800 kilowatt chargers now being installed. In fact, here in Australia, a company contacted me yesterday saying they're going to be installing 480 kilowatt DC chargers in Australia. 480. Why are they doing that? There's no cars you can get right now in Australia that charge at 480 kilowatt. Well, there will be next year. And then the next year, they'll be even faster than that. They'll be 600. In fact, we might even see some EVs from Zeekr next year that can charge at 600 kilowatt. So that is what's going to be happening. And more chargers will be built. And of course, these petrol stations will turn into EV stations, or they'll simply just disappear, turn into something else, or just be mothballed. And EV sales will continue to grow. Make no mistake, don't listen to the media. These are the statistics this year. EV sales worldwide have grown by more than 25%. That is not a slowdown. It doesn't matter who tells you there's a slowdown. Global sales are what dictate the market. I mean, if you live in Australia or you live in New Zealand or you live in, some random country, it doesn't matter what people buy in France. It doesn't matter what people buy in Australia because those car markets are minuscule. Think about it. 1 in 3 of all cars sold worldwide is sold in China. 1 in 3. In fact, more than that. It's around 34%. So what is being made in China and purchased in China is what will be sold and purchased in most countries around the world within the next few years. The Chinese automotive industry is growing at a rapid pace. Its technology is growing at a far faster pace than the rest of the world. And what that means is the Chinese are doing things like this, building factories. They are taking over the automotive industry in Thailand. Thailand is known as kind of like the auto industry that serves right-hand drive car markets like Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, Thailand themselves, the UK, even Japan now as well, right-hand drive car markets. So the Chinese, they're entering there, they're building numerous car factories. Sales of legacy automaker vehicles in Thailand have collapsed as a result. This is just to give you a picture. Look at BYD. They're planning factories. They're building one in Brazil. It's almost completed. They're building building ones in North Africa, in Turkey, in Europe, in Hungary. This is the future. The Chinese car market is essentially dictating the future. Now, yes, there still will be pickup trucks. It's true, China doesn't do them that well yet. There's only a small number. But China's basically saying, you know what, Ford, GM, you can have your pickup trucks. We'll take everything else.